Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we're gonna be repotting my sick Miltoniopsis orchid. In the past few weeks I purchased quite a few Miltoniopsis. They're still in bloom, still doing great, and I just decided to wait up with repotting them just until they finish with blooming. I want to see some brand new root tips growing from the new growths and overall try to do things properly. But this one, I suspect we have a serious problem with the root system. The orchid is very wobbly in its pot. I see a new growth starting, but it doesn't look all that great. And the flowers are already on their way out. No point in waiting. I do want to see what happens. So I'll show you how I intend to repot my Miltoniopsis, the mix that I will use and so on. So let's get to work. Now, first of all, of course, we're gonna unpot the orchid, and just like we do with the other orchids, we're gonna unstake it first. So we get this stake out of the way. And right now you can actually see just how wobbly this orchid is. It's really not supposed to be that way. So I will squeeze on the pot gently. Okay, so this is not bark or anything. This is actually, I think, that coconut fiber. I'm not sure. I really hope it's not peat moss. I suspect it's just that coconut fiber. And I'll talk a little bit about it. I'll share with you my experience with Miltoniopsis and the potting medium and so on. And I have to say, I dislike this medium. Of course, we have the sphagnum moss ball in the center. I do see a few good roots, I think. This is a good root. Oh, but the smell is really not pleasant, and I have a lot of dead roots as well. So I'll try to go as gently as I can. This medium is very messy, and most probably I'll remove as much as I can here and then go to the sink and give it a good wash. But I would like to remove as much as possible because this thing will clog up my sink most probably. Okay, so I've cleaned up the root system up to a point. All I did was just remove that coconut fiber, put it under the faucet to remove as much of it as possible. That's all. I didn't cut any roots. Before we go ahead and do that, let me show you what baffles me, and this is not the only case that I see. Mainly Miltoniopsis, but other oncidiums as well. When you purchase them, you only get one mature pseudobulb, and if you're a bit lucky, you can get some new growth. How do they do that? It baffles me. If this is a seedling, then it should have seedling pseudobulbs. If this is a clone, I don't really know how the process goes. But the bottom line is, the less pseudobulbs you have on an orchid, the less chances you have at a normal growth. What I suspect is happening is that initially this was a seedling because I found the plug of sphagnum moss and somebody just repotted it at some point because we had a different medium at the outside, and what they did at repotting was to remove the older pseudobulbs, only left one. Now if this is the case, it's a horrible idea. Who comes up with stuff like that? It only means you have less chances to actually grow that orchid normally. And if the stars align and you have some bad luck, you're gonna lose it completely. You have no backup plan for it. So if that's the case, I don't know. I can only draw the conclusion that these orchids are made to be enjoyed once, and whoever does this relies on the fact that we'll just keep buying more and more. Now, I don't like businesses like that. I encourage good companies, and I'm all for that. Being a marketing person myself, I get it. But this, no, you don't do business like this. But what do I know? Maybe I have no idea what I'm talking about. But yeah, this orchid does not have any old pseudobulbs. It does have a little bit of a rhizome. Maybe the older pseudobulbs were connected somewhere on this rhizome, but they're not here now. And I wanted to test it for fusarium, but I do not want to cut this rhizome. It is an open wound deep in the pot. I don't want to do that. If it had multiple pseudobulbs, I might have removed one of the seedling pseudobulbs and I could see, but now I have no way to know because I simply don't want to cut this rhizome. It's gonna spell trouble if I do. So that is that. A little bit of a rant, but stuff like this I don't get. Alrighty, let's continue with the repotting. So now I want to remove all of the dead roots, but that can be quite tricky because we have both light colored roots and also dark brown roots. Now the trick is, not all dark brown roots are dead and not all light colored roots are alive. So the best thing to do is to press gently on them. If you feel they're kind of mushy, try to pull a little bit on it. And as you can see, the velamen of the root is coming right off, leaving behind a string. This is definitely a dead root, and know if you leave the string attached, the root will not survive, so you can go ahead and cut it from the base. So we can do the very same thing on most of the roots. As you can see, this is a live root. I can feel it, it's stiff. I'm pulling gently. but the velamen doesn't come off. I don't need to pull a lot on it to figure out it's alive, but that is how you know. Especially with coconut husk and coconut fiber, the roots can get stained. So brown roots can actually be alive, but just stained. Pull on them a little bit. If they stay attached, they're good. If not, they're dead and you can cut them. So let's cut them. I have here a pair of pruners that has been sitting in alcohol for the past 10 minutes. I also like to sterilize through flame. When doing this, you need to be very, very, very careful. Whatever has alcohol in it will catch fire. So if you keep your shears like this, alcohol will drip, you set it on fire, it will go to your hands, and I don't need to continue this sentence. So keep it like this, pointing downwards if you want to flame it while the pruners has alcohol on it. If you don't, you can always flame it when it's dry, and that's a little safer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut everything that I see is dead on this orchid, and it's a long process because I am going to check most of the roots, so I'll just come back when I'm done. Okay, so I've cut away all of the dead roots that I could see, so the root system is not really in poor condition, it's not the best either, and I suspect the medium was really not okay for this orchid. Now, before we go ahead and spray hydrogen peroxide on the root system, I want to do another thing. I want to cut the flower spike, and this is an important step in the recovery of any sick or stressed orchid. And I know many people are a little wary of this, but let's think things logically. So, do we need the root system? Yes, we do. This is how the orchid obtains its moisture and nutrients. Okay, so they stay. Do we need the pseudobulbs? Yes, they are the main body of the orchid. They produce the roots, they produce the leaves, they store nutrients and moisture, and they produce new growth. Do we need them? Yeah, we need them. They can stay. Do we need the leaves? Yes, we need the leaves because it's the kitchen of the orchid. They photosynthesize. They transform all of that moisture and nutrients into sugars, which is energy for the orchid responsible with the growth of all of the organs. Do we leave the leaves on? Yes, we do. Okay, do we need the flower spike? No, we don't. So in the life of an individual, the flowers and the flower spike are nothing vital or nothing important. Of course, they are important for the well-being of the species, but we're not trying to save any species right here, we're trying to save this individual. Now, all of these structures of the orchid consume energy. As long as they are alive and on the orchid, they will keep consuming energy. So, this orchid really doesn't need this drainage of energy for no real purpose at all. There are some people who suggest that the orchid can withdraw the moisture and everything from the flower spike. I'm not sure about that, but I think I have a way to test it in a different video in any case. But what I'm most concerned about is that the energy stored in this flower spike will simply not be as much as the energy it takes to be alive and survive. So for this reason, and because this flower spike really doesn't do anything useful for our orchid other than drain it of energy, I cut it. So what I will do now is spray hydrogen peroxide 3% on the root system. This will make sure to kill any snails or snail eggs from my root system. Also, it can kill some fungi and spores, so all the more better. So I'm just gonna give a quick spray on the root system and a little bit on the rhizome. And let this orchid sit like this for a few minutes. Let it fizz. It's normal for the orchid to fizz. And also after this, I will not rinse it. After the initial reaction, this fizzing that you hear, all you'll have left is water, so there's no need to rinse it. Okay, so there's barely any more fizzing on my orchid. I can go ahead and repot it. Let me just show you my pot and medium. So I'm going for a 13 centimeter pot with a mixture of big Seramis and leca. And you might wonder, why do you do that? It's a Miltoniopsis, it likes moisture. It's a combination of things, so bear with me. If you remember, in one of my videos, I was telling you that the 13 and 11 centimeter pots are kind of tricky because they're right in the middle of not drying too fast, but not drying too slow either. And all the more the 13 centimeter pot is the trickiest because it really depends on other things how fast this pot will dry. Also, let's remember I have here an orchid which only has one pseudobulb and the root system is okay but not the best. Until it will start to establish and soak up water, it's gonna take a while. And also there's the nature of the Miltoniopsis. Now this orchid is not a semi-terrestrial. It's not a terrestrial in any way. It does enjoy moisture, but at the same time it enjoys air and air movement and ventilation. It is an epiphyte. If you ever had Miltoniopsis, you know that you can have aerial roots on Miltoniopsis just going in the air by themselves. Semi-terrestrials and terrestrials don't do that. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It likes ventilation. It does enjoy moisture, but let's not forget about air. Now, in the past, I had quite a few Miltoniopsis, and for a while, I was very successful with them, which led me to believe I'm the queen of Miltoniopsis, which sadly isn't true, because I lost all of my Miltoniopsis the following summer, when I was gone for 2 months. Anyway, so at that time I was quite the beginner with Miltoniopsis, and what I did was I pot them in bark, no sphagnum moss, no nothing. And the funny thing is, they did spectacular. Also, I didn't have a lot of orchids. I could stay on top of watering. I soaked my Miltoniopsis regularly, never let them go super bone dry. They were happy. I did not have setbacks. I had reblooms. Everything was going perfect, and the quality of the roots overall was impeccable. Now further on, I tried some mixtures with sphagnum moss, and although things were okay and watering was kind of easier, the quality of the roots was not the same. So right now I am more inclined to control everything by the watering and not by the medium necessarily. Although I am using water retentive medium, but also some aeration. And all these factors combined, the pot size, the season even, the way that my orchid looks like, and the fact that I want to keep it in this pot for a long time without repotting it, all boils down to one. I'm gonna use a mixture of leca and Seramis, and I think it's gonna be much better than only Seramis, or worse, the small grade Seramis in this pot. If I had a small pot, small grade Seramis would be perfect. This orchid does not have chunky roots, it has fine roots, it's good. But all these factors combined just make me use this mixture, and I think it's better for me. So now, how do we arrange this orchid in the pot? Well, she's kind of weird. So we have a new growth here, but also a new growth here, right on the side. So I cannot really put it on any side. If I do this, this growth will not have room. If I do this, this growth will not have room. Also, this is one pseudobulb. It's the only pseudobulb on this orchid. It makes sense for me to kind of center it and then kind of try to train the growths to fill up the pot. So in this case, and I think it's the first case that I ever have, it is best to center a sympodial orchid at repotting, simply because we have growths on both sides. So that's what I'm gonna do. I will continue to put medium around the root system. And by the way, my medium is dry because this is a medium I am reusing. I boiled it, I let it dry. The quantity of dust is really low, so this is why it's dry. But when working with Seramis and leca, it's best to rinse it very well before using it. So I'll go ahead and put medium around my orchid. It's pretty hard to do on camera, so I'll come back when I'm done. And here is the finished result. I also watered this orchid. I always water my orchids after repotting. It's just something that I do, and particularly with Miltoniopsis that don't like to be dry, I do water them. Now, this orchid is not the most stable thing you've ever seen, but I don't usually carry my orchids to the sink, so there's really no danger of this orchid falling off. Normally I would try to place a stake, but since I'm now moving this orchid and she's in a corner very protected, I will not do that. And that's about it with this Miltoniopsis. I hope she will do okay. I'll keep you up to date. I really hope she'll be okay. As you might know, I really love Miltoniopsis. They're just kind of tricky, and I feel rather misunderstood because when you say water-loving orchids, you tend to go kind of compacted medium, kind of water retentive medium, and it's not always a good idea. All it means is that an orchid doesn't really like to stay dry because maybe in its natural habitat, even though it's an epiphyte growing on a tree, it does have humidity and moisture available almost at all times. But the air is still there, and in the case of Miltoniopsis, I feel that's exactly what happens. This orchid needs the same amount of ventilation and air, just like any other epiphytic orchid, but it really doesn't like to be all that dry, and of course a dry environment and dry medium will be very detrimental. Once this orchid starts to go downwards, it's really hard to recover. With that said though, let's not be pessimistic, and fingers crossed for this orchid. I'll keep you up to date. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this useful. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for daily orchid and plants videos and updates, and also don't forget to turn on notifications, that little bell next to the subscribe button, so you don't miss any of my videos. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Well, what can I say? This looks more and more like a new growth. Although the orchid still has leaves. What are you doing? Until I get to see some flowers, I think the trend of black flowers will go out of fashion. Oh well. I'm just kidding. I don't care about the fashion, but I really want to see some dark colored flowers.